Hey everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome to my garden. I'm really happy to have you here with me today. I had this whole vision that I was going to wake up bright and early and come out and spend some time with you in the garden, and we would have beautiful light from that nice golden morning light. And I woke up this morning to a thick smoke in the air. Fortunately, it seems to have cleared out a little bit. It's about 6:45 in the morning right now, and the sun is starting to break through the clouds. So hopefully we will get some nice light as we progress with our harvest this morning. We have had some pretty smoky days over the last couple of days here in British Columbia from all of the fires in Canada, and I think down in California there's some fires too, and that smoke is blowing up this way. But it does look like it is going to clear out. It was really bad when I woke up first thing this morning, but I'll show you what we've got now. So you can see how smoky it is out there, but it is clearing up over here. There's a bit of a breeze and the smoke seems to be blowing out of the valley, which is awesome. I love having my ducks in the garden this time of year. I don't let them come into the garden until the plants are really mature because they can cause a lot of damage to small seedlings, but I do love having them in here. We're just going to take a wander through the garden and see what we have to harvest this morning. I did see when I walked through the gate some gigantic zucchinis. That one got a little bit too big. Couple more nice ones over here. With big zucchinis like this, they're still totally usable. If you don't take the seeds out, however, you will have a really watery zucchini. So I just slice them down the middle, scoop the seeds out with a spoon, and then continue to process it whatever way I am going to. So I think with these guys, I will probably cut them into chunks and freeze dry them, and then I can add them into smoothies and soup and things like that in the winter. So I'm sure, even though we're coming to the end of our pickling cucumbers, that we have pickling cucumbers to harvest along here, but we'll grab those in a bit. Look at those sweet ducks. This guy is Skipper, and that's Tiny. And they are, I think they're 7 now at this point. There are only 2 ducks we have, and we have them just because they bring us joy, for no other reason than that. Look at how beautiful the onions are looking. And this is another bed up over here, and I've been harvesting out of this one. Oh, I wanted to show you this. I noticed this yesterday, and I've never had this happen before. Let's see if I can find any in here. I have had some, oh, there's one. I have had some of my turnips rotting right in the ground. Look at that. I have never seen that happen in my life, ever. So I don't know if I accidentally overwatered this bed or what happened, but needless to say, do need to get these turnips picked and put into the root cellar. I've planted my turnips and my beets here at the same time of year as I always do, and the majority of this entire row is intended for my root cellar, which is over there. But they are sized up now to the point that I really should pick them and get them into the root cellar, otherwise they're going to be too big. This is particularly true for the turnips because they get kind of woody when they get really large. But normally I don't start harvesting my vegetables to go into my root cellar until into September. We'll take a wander down there so I can show you why. Oh, it smells so good in the garden in the morning. I love it. This is my root cellar. As you can see, really simple, old school root cellar. So what I normally do, usually in around June or so, is I open up the inside door here and the outside door so that the root cellar can air out and dry out a little bit. And then I'll close it up this time of year, which I'm going to do right now, like so that it can start to cool down in there, because it's pretty warm because I've had the doors open, of course. but it needs to be quite cool in order to keep my vegetables, my root vegetables, nice and crisp. So I think what I'm going to have to do this year is leave the root vegetables in the garden, even though they're kind of at the size that's ideal for picking and storing in there. Let them get a little bigger, deal with them being a little bit more tough than I would maybe like, and put them into the root cellar once it's had a chance to cool down. We are having a shift in the weather right now, and the temperatures are coming down, and our nighttime temperatures are really cooling down significantly. So hopefully it won't take too long to get the root cellar to a temperature that I would be wanting to put root vegetables in there. I'd like to see it definitely below 10 degrees Celsius in there, preferably more like 5, although we won't be seeing temperatures like that probably until the end of September at this point. I have said this so many times this year, I feel like in almost every video that we spend together out in the garden, I talk about what a weird year it's been, but it really has been. Even look at this. So my celery, I can normally leave in the garden until the end of September, even the beginning of October, because it can handle cooler temperatures. But look at this. Look at the size of this celery. This is definitely ready to harvest. So I was actually worried about my celery just because it was looking so terrible up until, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now it looks absolutely fantastic and ready to be harvested. And our beets, same thing. We have lots of big beets in here. So I think what we might do actually is go through here and pull out all these big ones, like this one here. That is a beautiful beet, because there are some small ones in here that could size up for going into the root cellar. So let's do that. Let's pick some beets here, pick out the nice big ones, and maybe we can go in and make some Harvard beets and maybe some pickled beets. I absolutely love beets. Oh my gosh, you know what we should make today? We should make a cabbage and beet soup, a borscht. Borscht is one of my very favorite soups in all the world to make. I absolutely love it. Well, not just to make, but to eat it. It is so delicious. And I think we have every ingredient that we would need to make the entire soup in our garden ready today. That sounds like a fun thing. Dan will be happy about that. He loves borscht. Oh, the sun's coming out. Yay! Oh, I'm glad. There's actually some smaller beets in here that could definitely stay in the garden until mid-September for winter storage, which is great. My beets store just wonderfully in my root cellar. Oh, I'm so happy the sun's coming out. Let's go around the other side. Humongous. Oh my gosh. Got some big ones on this side. This side must have got a little bit more water than the other side did, because these ones are huge. I love beets roasted. I like beets canned. I like fresh beets grated in salads. Beets any old way. The only thing I'm not crazy about when it comes to beets is the fact that you have to pre-cook them for most things, just because they are a pretty dense vegetable. So for canning, for instance, you need to pre-cook them and then peel them. But outside of that, they're well nigh a perfect vegetable in my opinion. And anytime I pick vegetables out of my garden and we have all these beautiful tops, people always ask me what I do with those tops, whether I feed them to my animals, whether we use them. So when it comes to beet tops, if they're still looking pretty good like this, I will sometimes steam them and eat them. I'm the only person that really likes beet tops. Or I will freeze dry them, powder them up, use them to add to smoothies and things like that. But often, especially when I'm doing my larger harvest for the root cellar, I'll just cut all the tops off, because by that time of year they're starting to look not fantastic like that one. And they will just go out into my compost pile, and I'll show you that in a second. And then my cows will normally come by, because my compost pile is just in my field where my cows graze, and they'll come and eat all the tops. Oftentimes I'll throw them in with my chickens, but they never get wasted. They get consumed by something around here. See how my golden beets are looking. Oh, they look good. Look at that. So pretty. I like adding golden beets to anything that I want a beet flavor, but I don't want the red color of the other beets. So these ones are Cylindra. These are one of my favorite beets to grow because they're so easy to process, just because of the shape of them. And they make really nice pickles. They're easy to peel. I just love them. Good flavor, all of that. I honestly don't really find a big difference between the flavor of different beets. They all kind of just taste like beet to me, even the golden ones, but the golden ones are good if you don't want that red color. We have our beans starting to come on down here. I am not a big fan of, well, when I say I'm not a big fan of canned green beans, what I mean is I really don't like them at all. And nobody in my house does. But a couple of the women in my membership community have told me that canned green beans is their absolute favorite, and have convinced me that I just need to give them another go and maybe try some other recipes. So we did a challenge this month to come up with, or not come up with, but share some recipes, and then we're actually trying them. Everyone gets to pick one of those recipes to try that people have shared. And one of the recipes that was shared was green beans and bacon, like canned green beans with bacon and some other seasonings. What I have decided to do is I'm going to can a few cans of green beans and see if I cannot adjust my palate to like canned green beans. I do like frozen green beans, which is funny because all the women in my community who like canned green beans despise frozen green beans. So one person did say that it was probably just something that you like, if you grew up with canned green beans, then you like them as an adult sort of thing. And I never grew up with canned green beans. But the funny thing is that all of the women in my community that like canned green beans say that frozen green beans they think are absolutely disgusting, which I think is really funny. So needless to say, we are going to try. I do love dilly beans, so that's pickled green beans with dill and garlic. Those I think are delicious. A few little red pepper flakes. I said this in my last video, but I don't know why I grew such a small patch. This patch that you see right here, this is all the green beans that I grew this year. I don't know why. I actually was thinking yesterday when I was walking around my garden that I actually am going to need to expand it a little bit. I have an idea for that. I planted a whole bunch of extra potatoes this year in this section over here that I kind of used for an overflow section for my garden right here. And as you can see, there's a ton of weeds coming up. I just tilled all the weeds under basically in the spring and planted my potatoes right in it. So what I think I'm going to do is when we harvest all the potatoes is I'm going to cover this section with a silage tarp and leave that on until I'm ready to plant next year, and then convert this into an extension of the main vegetable garden up here. And I'll probably do green beans and carrots and onions down here, because onions too, do you guys remember back when I started my onions in, I think, the beginning of February or mid-February? I started probably 1,000 onions, and somehow in my garden right now I only have a couple hundred onions, and I have no idea what happened with all of those seedlings that I started, because I'm sure that I planted them all. Needless to say, I'm definitely going to need more onions than I planted for winter, but it'll be a start anyway. Okay, just a little handful of green beans. Oh shoot, darn it. See all this veg here? This is from this section of the garden that we're starting to get cleaned out and fall prepping these beds. So this is where my cauliflower and some cabbages and things like that that we harvested the other day together were. And when we cleaned out these beds, this produce here was some of the produce that we pulled out of that bed. So I need to get this up to the house, but there's a couple cabbages up there that we can use for making our borscht. There are also some kohlrabi, and I'm kind of wondering if that would hold up in my root cellar. Nah, I think I'll probably just peel these, chop them up, blanch them, and freeze them. So let's see if there's anything else we need to harvest. Yes, there definitely is. That's a very, oh dear. Oh shoot. Oh, I hate it when I do that, when I don't pick things on time and then they go bad. I could salvage off some of these good florets off of this, but to be honest, I had such an amazing harvest of cauliflower this year and have more than enough for the winter. So I think I'll just throw this one in the compost pile for the cows. We just have a few of the Savoy leafed cabbages left, which I'm going to leave. These are a winter storage cabbage, so I'll leave those to size up a little bit more. We have a few smaller cabbages in here. Let's see what's in here. Oh, that cauliflower can be harvested. That's gorgeous. Definitely don't want to lose that beauty. One of the things that I have been doing in my garden over the last couple of years that has made such a difference on so many levels is when I am done clearing out a row. So for instance, here where we have our cauliflower and our cabbage harvested out of here, is I try to clean up the beds right away. Pull it out of all the weeds that are in it, especially this time of year when weeds are starting to go to seed, and get those out of the garden. And then come fall, once the garden is completely cleaned out, we'll come in and top dress all of these with a good layer of compost. Then come spring, we do the same thing. Go through all the beds, get all the weeds out, and then do another top dressing of compost. And then throughout the summer, I have really been trying to stay on top of the weeding. So I'll come down in the evening or in the early morning and just pick a bed. This would be an example, just a little bed this size, and just weed the whole thing. It takes maybe 30 minutes or so, once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's actually been every 2 weeks this summer, just because we're also doing a no-till garden, which I'll get to in a minute. But our overall weed pressure has been relatively low in the garden. So for around half an hour to an hour, once every week or two, we all come out into the garden and just pick a row and weed it all. And it takes very little time. Many hands make light work. That's part of it. If I had to maintain the weeding on the whole garden myself, it would probably be a lot more time consuming than just a half an hour to an hour every week. So one of the other things that I have done, which I do think has made a massive difference, is I've moved back into a no-till garden. So that basically means that I use tilling very minimally in my garden. For instance, when I did the potato patch over there that I was talking about, in the spring to get the beds ready, I did till it. And the rows themselves, I used a tiller in the spring that just was down like a couple inches to till in all of the compost into the soil, just kind of get everything mixed in. I'm not running my big tiller, my big tractor through the garden every spring and tilling everything up. And why I think this is beneficial when it comes to weeds is there are just millions of weed seeds in all soil, pretty much. And when you turn it up and you bring those seeds to the top of the soil, they germinate with all the water and the sun and all of that. But if you don't, over a couple of years of being really diligent with weeding, not letting weeds go to seed in your garden, that's really important. Eventually you get on top of the weeds, and that's what I feel has happened this year, is that we've gotten to the point where we are pretty much on top of the weeds. This time of year, like I just said, it's really important to pull your weeds before they go to seed. Let me show you over here. So what do we have in here? This is a nightshade weed, and it is just flowering here and just starting to go to seed. You see that seed there? So if we get it out before that seed can actually get dropped into the soil, we're not going to have new seeds next year, because those are annual weeds. Same with the pigweed here. So this is pigweed or wild amaranth, and it is one that's going to seed in my garden, and you can see that it's just starting to there. So we want to get that out. I don't have a ton of perennial weeds left in my garden at this point. Perennial grasses though, definitely have some of those. But as long as, oh, there's another pigweed over there. But as long as I stay on top, oh, there's another one, of getting these weeds out that have seeds in them, it makes such a huge difference. And then by not tilling, I'm not bringing up all those seeds that are kind of waiting in the ground to come up to the surface. And I feel like this has really shifted things in my garden as far as the weed pressure goes. So I'm hopeful that within a couple more years, I'll be to the point where there really will be very little weed pressure at all. Oh, look at that. This beet is about to bolt. So let's pull that one out. Oh, yeah. Usually if I find if a beet or a carrot is going to bolt, you're always going to end up with a tiny little root at the bottom. Okay, something else that we're going to pick here is some of these dill heads, because we'll use these for our dilly beans. I say this all the time. Anytime I ever come over and look at my dill, smell my dill, anything to do with my dill, I always say how much I love it, and I really do. It smells amazing. I think it is just the most beautiful herb, and it makes pickles taste amazing. Lots of other things too. Actually, you know what? We will take some of the leaves and we will use these to top our borscht that we're going to make, our beet and cabbage soup. I love fresh dill in my beet soup. So good. Happy little bed of snapdragons. Zinnia. I really do love zinnia. One of my favorite flowers. Oh, did I show you guys this in the last video? I don't think I did. Look at that. It is almost black. So gorgeous. We need some carrots for our beet soup too. I didn't plant enough carrots either. I am at the time of year where I really am done making pickles. I don't want to make pickles anymore, but I definitely have another at least 1 to 2 pickings left of cucumbers in here to turn into some more pickles. We could use a few more jars, especially of the sliced sandwich pickles for the pantry. But I'm looking forward to the pickles being done. The kale I usually leave in the garden until we have a frost, maybe even a couple of frosts before I harvest it, mostly because it will hold up to really cold temperatures, so I can wait and harvest that once all of the other produce is out of the garden and in the pantry. Oh, there's another zucchini. This one's called Black Beauty. Oh, did I tell you that I ended up getting that new queen for my hive that had lost its queen, and I installed her into her hive almost a week ago now. And I'm going to give it another couple of days, maybe even a week, before I go in and make sure she's doing her job. But as soon as I opened up her cage, she went right down in and started laying. It was really, really cool to see. So huge thank you to Winston and Nina from BCB Supply for getting that queen to me as quickly as they did. I was very grateful. So now we're down in the high tunnel, and look at this. We have blushing happening all over our tomatoes, which is exciting. I have started to harvest out of here, but not for preserving, just for eating. But I have a feeling that this is going to be a pretty decent year in the high tunnel, because we have a few weeks left for sure, probably 3, maybe even 4 weeks left before it gets so cold in here that it actually kills off the vines. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And because everything is getting a nice blush and a lot of these tomatoes have sized up to their mature size at this point of the season, I feel really positive about the tomato harvest this year, which is great. It's so good. So I'm feeling positive about this, and I'm feeling a little bit less positive about my peppers. So let me tell you why. As you know, I've been pretty enthusiastic about my peppers over the last 3 or 4 weeks, because they started out just looking terrible. They just weren't growing. It was too cold, yada, yada. And then they just took off, as you can see here. They look absolutely beautiful. So we have these beautiful big plants, right? But can you see how these ones are looking a little bit yellow? I decided to give them a bit of a fertilizing with some fish fertilizer. I think actually that was in my last video. Because I thought maybe I'd give them a little bit of a boost because they were looking a little sad. I was uploading a video onto YouTube, and a video came across my suggested from M.I. Gardener. So I clicked on it because the title I found intriguing, and it was the top 3 or 4 things you're doing wrong with your peppers. And I'm always looking to learn new information. So I clicked on the video. So one of the things he said in this video was one of the issues that people have with peppers is overwatering. And this is something that I know, this is something that I've talked to you about many, many times before. And one of the symptoms and signs of overwatering is yellowing. Not only is it yellowing, but it's lots of growth and not a lot of flowers and not a lot of fruit. And this is something that I have noticed on my peppers over the last couple of weeks. You can see we have lots of beautiful growth here, a little bit of kind of yellowing on the top, right? Nice dark green leaves down here, but yellowing on the new growth. And if you look down here, we have one nice looking pepper there, a couple forming up over here, but not a ton, right? Not for the size of plant, that's for sure. And I had noticed this about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that the amount of fruit on the plant was certainly not what I would expect for the size of plant. Whole overwatering thing just sort of niggled in the back of my brain, because this is something I'm always very careful about with my peppers, because it does impact them. You really should let them dry out in between waterings. It's just what they prefer. Unlike tomatoes, tomatoes like consistent water. So this is when the light bulb moment went off for me. I have drip irrigation. You can see the lines here all over my high tunnel. And all this drip irrigation is hooked up to the same line. There are valves on each line that I can adjust. And sometimes I will if I feel like one bed has gotten more water than the other, or one has dried out. The one over on the east side of the high tunnel here tends to dry out more so than the one on the west side. So sometimes I'll change them around. So I have been turning on my drip irrigation for my high tunnel for the whole thing, basically all summer long. And so what's been happening with that is that these pepper plants here in this row have been getting the same amount of water as my tomatoes, which is quite a lot. And it is too much, too much water for these. So if I had been more diligent about making sure that these beds actually dried out before I watered them, and just turned the valves off on the drip lines to these beds when I would be watering my tomatoes, I'm 99.9% sure that this issue of not a ton of peppers on my plants, I would not be dealing with. As you can see, that's a gorgeous fruit, good sized fruit, But the amount of fruit on this plant, lots of space in between, just a couple up here, and all of these flowers that are up here are not going to have time to actually produce fruit. So it's not going to be terrible. I'm still probably going to get a decent enough harvest of peppers off these plants, but I am definitely not going to get the amount of fruit off this plant that I could, or these plants that I could have had I watered them properly. This kind of mistake frustrates me a little bit because I know better, but I don't know why, I just did not connect the even watering that everything was getting in this high tunnel as something that would be detrimental to any of the plants. I don't know why. I just didn't think of it. But now I have. Live and learn, right? This is one of the things about gardening, is no matter how long you have been gardening. I have been gardening, I would say, almost my entire life. My mom was an avid gardener. My grandfather was an avid gardener. I started my first garden on my own when I was probably 22, 23 years old. I've been gardening for a long time. I even am a master gardener. I've taken a master gardening program. And yet still, even with all of that experience and all of that knowledge, I can make mistakes like this. And so I hope that can be an encouragement to you if you have made mistakes in your garden and you are maybe new to gardening and you find that really discouraging. Just take heart. It's totally normal. No matter how long you've been gardening, each year there's something new to learn. You'll probably make a new mistake each year that you can learn from. That's kind of one of the beautiful things about gardening, as much as it's kind of frustrating, is that there's always something to learn. But something that I have grown this year that turned out better than any I've ever grown before are my slicing cucumbers. They just did absolutely fantastic in this part of the high tunnel, so down towards the north end. Trellised up on the cattle panel like this. They just did amazing. They are delicious. Sometimes when you grow cucumbers, they can get kind of a soapy flavor, and that often has to do with watering, with an inconsistent watering. Cucumbers are definitely one, like tomatoes, that like to be consistently watered. They don't like to dry out in between. My daughter's going to be so excited because we have tons of little cucamelons in here. Okay, do I need any peppers for any recipes? I don't think so. I think we're all right. So close to being able to harvest some of our melons here. Probably a couple more weeks. I'm not going to bother opening up the back of the high tunnel today because it is fairly cool out here still. I'll leave the front door open though, just in case the sun comes out and starts beating on that. It can heat up in there so quickly. Let's see what else. Oh, I gotta grab this guy. We do need a couple of onions for our soup. That should do us. I don't want to do it, but I know I'm going to regret it if I don't. So let's pick our cucumbers. There are tons and tons and tons in here. Oh dear. Guess we are canning up pickles again today. I have shared quite a bit of pickle canning in the last few weeks, so I probably won't share some step-by-step instructions today, but I'll show you what we end up with. Either way, I ended up getting a ton of pickling cucumbers, so we're definitely making pickles. But something else that I realized that we needed for our soup is some potatoes. So I thought it might be kind of fun to come up to the potato patch up here and do a couple of test pulls on our potatoes. I did pull up a few potatoes from the overflow potato patch down in the main garden the other day, and the potatoes were looking good, but I haven't tried a pull from up here yet. So let's see what we got. Let's turn off our charger. so we don't shock ourselves. Is dry. I gotta put my sprinkler on. These are just like little tiny baby new potatoes. Lots of them though. But this is bone dry, so I really need to get my sprinkler on here and just leave it on for a while. Potatoes are something, another vegetable that really likes consistent water. Some beautiful red ones. Let's turn that back on. Turn our sprinkler on. All right, friends, we spent so much time wandering around the garden and visiting today that I think we're going to hold off and do all of the preserving in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed spending some time in the garden with me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.